Something's living in the woods, and I think it knows my name. The stillness was the first thing that got to me. Not just quiet, but still, like the air itself was holding its breath. I hadn't expected it. After years of sirens and shouting, of deadlines screaming in my ear, and the constant thrum of a city that never slept, I craved quiet. But this was different. This was Havenwood quiet. I'd bought the cabin site unseen, a foreclosure nestled on the edge of the woods. The photos online showed a rustic A-frame surrounded by towering pines and the promise of solitude. What the photos didn't show was the weight of the place, the way the shadows seemed to deepen earlier than they should, the way the wind whispered secrets you couldn't quite decipher. The first few weeks were idyllic. I spent my days hiking, exploring the trails that crisscrossed the mountains. I read, I cooked, I slept. For the first time in years, my anxiety began to ease. The insomnia, a constant companion since my last assignment, started to loosen its grip. I even started writing again, something I hadn't been able to do since everything went to hell. Then the noises started. At first, I dismissed them as the sounds of the forest settling. A branch falling, an animal rustling in the undergrowth. Normal. But they persisted, growing more frequent, more distinct. There was a rhythmic tapping, like someone knocking on a distant tree, a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground, and sometimes, late at night, a faint whisper, carried on the wind. I couldn't make out the words, just a sibilant murmur that prickled the hairs on the back of my neck. I started sleeping with a flashlight beside the bed. One afternoon, I walked into town for supplies. Havenwood was smaller than I'd imagined, a cluster of weather-beaten houses huddled around a general store and a gas station. The air hung thick with the scent of pine and wood smoke. The general store was run by Sarah Jenkins, a woman in her late 60s with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. She had a kind smile and a way of looking at you that made you feel both seen and slightly uncomfortable. "New to the cabin, are you?" she asked, ringing up my groceries. "Elias Thorne," I said, extending my hand. "Just moved in." "Sarah Jenkins, welcome to Havenwood, Elias." Her smile faded slightly. "Hope you find what you're looking for." I bought some coffee, some canned goods, and a map of the surrounding trails. As I turned to leave, Sarah spoke again. "The woods can be unforgiving," she said, her voice low. "Best to stick to the marked paths. And don't go wandering around after dark." "Noted," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Thanks for the advice." That night, the whispers were louder. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the windows. I imagined Sarah's face, her knowing eyes. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself it was just the wind, just my imagination. But deep down, a seed of unease had been planted. The next day, I decided to explore the woods closer to the cabin. I figured if I familiarized myself with the terrain, the noises wouldn't seem so strange. I followed a narrow path that led deeper into the forest, the sunlight dappling through the canopy. It was beautiful, in a wild, untamed way. Towering trees, thick undergrowth, the air alive with the sounds of birds and insects. But there was also something unsettling about it, a sense of being watched. I walked for hours, losing myself in the labyrinthine trails. As the afternoon wore on, the shadows lengthened and the temperature dropped. I started to feel disoriented, like I was walking in circles. Then I saw it. A deer. Standing motionless in a small clearing, its eyes fixed on me. It wasn't the deer itself that was strange, but its eyes. They were too bright, too intense. They seemed to glow with an unnatural light. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The deer stared at me for what felt like an eternity, then turned and vanished into the trees. I stood there for a long time, trying to catch my breath. I told myself it was just a deer, just a trick of the light. But the feeling of being watched intensified, and I knew I had to get out of there. I turned around and started to walk back the way I'd come, but the path was gone. I was lost. Panic began to set in. I called out, but my voice was swallowed by the trees. The shadows deepened, and the whispers returned, louder now, closer. "Elias," I whirled around, but there was no one there. Just the trees, the shadows, and the whispers. Elias Thorne. The voice was inside my head now, a cold, insidious presence. I ran, stumbling through the undergrowth, branches whipping at my face. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to get away. Finally, after what seemed like hours, I saw it. The cabin. A beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against it, gasping for air, my body trembling. I was safe, for now, but the whispers followed me inside. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, clutching a hunting knife, listening to the sounds of the forest. The whispers, the tapping, the growls. They were all around me, closing in. At some point, I must have drifted off, because I woke up to a sound that made my blood run cold. Footsteps. Outside the cabin. I crept to the window and peered out. The moon was hidden behind a thick layer of clouds, casting the woods in an eerie darkness. I couldn't see anything. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. I held my breath, my hand tightening around the knife. Then I heard it. A soft, raspy voice speaking my name. Elias. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Elias Thorne, we know why you're here. The voice was so close, it felt like it was inside the cabin with me. You can't hide from us, Elias. We know your secrets. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. Come out, Elias. We just want to talk. I backed away from the door, my eyes darting around the room. I was trapped. The voice chuckled, a low, chilling sound. Suit yourself, Elias. But you can't stay inside forever. The footsteps faded away, disappearing into the woods. I stayed up all night, watching the windows, listening for any sign of movement. The whispers continued, taunting me, reminding me of my past, of the things I had tried so hard to forget. The next morning, I drove back to town. I needed answers. I found Sarah Jenkins behind the counter of the general store, sorting through a pile of old photographs. Sarah, I said, my voice hoarse. I need to ask you something about the woods. She looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of pity and fear. I knew you'd be back, she said. I told her about the noises, the whispers, the deer with the unnatural eyes. I told her about the voice that knew my name. She listened patiently, her expression growing more somber with each word. When I was finished, she sighed and shook her head. The woods have always been different, she said. There are things out there that people don't understand, things that have been here for a long time. What things? I asked. What's out there? She hesitated, then reached under the counter and pulled out a thick, leather-bound book. This is the history of Havenwood, she said. It's been passed down through generations. It tells the story of the town and the thing that lives in the woods. I took the book, my hands trembling. What is it? I asked. They call it the Walker, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It's an ancient entity, a creature of the forest. It feeds on fear, on pain, on the secrets that people try to bury. And it knows my name? It knows everything, she said. It sees everything. It's been watching you since you arrived. I flipped through the book, scanning the pages. There were stories of disappearances, of strange rituals, of a dark presence that haunted the woods. There were drawings of the Walker, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes and long, spindly limbs. What does it want? I asked. It wants what it always wants, she said. It wants to consume you, to break you down and feed on your soul. How do I stop it? She shook her head. You can't. No one ever has. All you can do is try to survive. I closed the book, my mind reeling. There has to be something, I said. Some way to fight it. She looked at me, her eyes filled with sadness. There is one thing, she said. But it's dangerous, and it might not work. What is it? There's a clearing deep in the woods, she said. An old ritual site. It said that if you confront the Walker there, you can weaken it. But you have to be strong. You have to be willing to face your fears. I'll do it, I said. I have to. She nodded. Be careful, Elias. The Walker is powerful, and it knows you better than you know yourself. That night, I gathered my supplies. A flashlight, a map, the hunting knife. I also took the book, hoping it might offer some guidance. I walked into the woods, my heart pounding in my chest. The whispers were louder than ever, taunting me, trying to dissuade me. I followed the map, navigating through the dense undergrowth. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the silence was oppressive. As I got closer to the clearing, the temperature dropped, and a thick fog began to roll in. I could barely see a few feet in front of me. Then I saw it. The clearing. A small, circular space surrounded by ancient trees. In the center was a stone altar, stained with what looked like dried blood. I stepped into the clearing, my senses on high alert. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a vortex. Elias. The voice was different now, closer, more menacing. You shouldn't have come here. I turned around, but there was no one there. Who are you? I shouted. What do you want? The fog swirled, and a figure began to materialize in front of me. It was tall and gaunt, with long, spindly limbs and glowing eyes. It was the Walker. We are the forest, it said, its voice a guttural growl. We are the shadows. We are the things you fear. I'm not afraid of you, I said, my voice trembling. The Walker chuckled. You will be. It lunged at me, its long, sharp claws outstretched. I raised the knife and slashed at it, but it passed right through, like it was made of smoke. The Walker laughed again. You can't hurt us, Elias. We are beyond your comprehension. It reached out and touched my face, its cold, clammy hand sending a shiver down my spine. We know your secrets, Elias, it whispered. We know what you did. Images flashed through my mind. The car crash, the hospital, the faces of the dead, the guilt, the pain, the regret. The Walker was feeding on my memories, on my fears. I stumbled backward, trying to get away. Leave me alone, I screamed. Never, it said. You belong to us now. It grabbed me again, its claws digging into my flesh. I cried out in pain, my vision blurring. Then I remembered the book. I reached into my backpack and pulled it out, flipping through the pages until I found what I was looking for. A drawing of a symbol, an ancient rune that was said to ward off evil. I closed my eyes and concentrated, trying to visualize the symbol in my mind. I felt a surge of energy coursing through my body. I opened my eyes and looked at the Walker. The symbol was glowing on my forehead, a beacon of light in the darkness. The Walker recoiled, hissing in pain. What is that? It screamed. It's the end for you, I said, my voice stronger now. I raised the book and began to chant, reciting the words that were written beneath the symbol. The Walker writhed in agony, its body dissolving into smoke. The fog began to dissipate, and the clearing was bathed in moonlight. The Walker was gone. I stood there for a long time, catching my breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I had faced the Walker, and I had survived. But I knew it wasn't over. The Walker was still out there, lurking in the shadows. And it would be back. I returned to the cabin, exhausted and shaken. I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. The woods were no longer a place of solace, but a place of fear. I packed my bags and left Havenwood the next morning. As I drove away, I looked back at the woods, a shiver running down my spine. I knew the Walker was watching me. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm going to do. But I know I can't stop running, because something's living in the woods, and it knows my name, and I fear it always will. The further I run, the more the forest calls me back. I keep hearing the whispers, even in the city, especially when it rains. Sarah was wrong. I wasn't strong enough. It has followed me. It always will.